So we're going to get started here right now. This particular webinar, the topic of it is a little bit misleading because it's about finding a position in a difficult legal market, but it's actually about much more than that because it's going to show you today how to not just find a job, but how to have like a really good career. And I'm going to talk to you about things that I've learned in probably 25 years, at least 25 years of doing this, where people are able to get jobs kind of no matter what, based on things and decisions they make. And it doesn't matter really where you went to law school. It doesn't matter what your background is. And it doesn't really matter like where you are right now in your career. I'm going to talk to you about how to position yourself to be marketable and do things that probably at least 85% of attorneys aren't doing that makes them kind of unhappy practicing law and kind of at a crossroads. This will applies to law students deciding how you're going to run your career, but it also applies to newer attorneys and then even very, very experienced attorneys. I spend my day like speaking to law firms and candidates. So I do this webinar once a week, but then the rest of my time is pretty much spent talking to people. And I talk to people that are succeeding and I talk to people that aren't succeeding. But the majority of people I talk to are succeeding. So I'm going to tell you what they do and how they position themselves. I'm going to tell you what they do that makes them happy in this career, because a lot of people aren't. And I'm going to kind of reveal the secrets to that. One thing that's important to understand is in terms of having a happy career, your pedigree is really not as important as the kind of decisions that you're making in your career about how you're running your career, the choices you're making, where you're putting your effort into, and a lot of other factors that I'm going to cover today. So I think from the standpoint of watching this webinar, it is something that if you learn and understand what I'm talking about today, it's going to make you much more successful. It's going to make you happier. And it's going to give you the tools to really turn around your career from where you are now to where you may be. So even if you think you're at the very pinnacle of your career now, which, for whatever reason, on these webinars, a lot of the people that watch these are people from the top law firms. And I think one of the reasons for that is because people, that are at top law firms continually want to learn. And people that like yourself that are watching this stuff and learning it, just what you're going to hear today could change the entire direction of your career in life. So this is a live webinar. So what I'll do is I'll give this presentation. This particular presentation is not going to be one of the longer ones, but I'll give the presentation and then we'll take a quick break for like a minute or two, and then we'll come back and do as many questions as everyone has. So as you're watching the webinar, I would encourage you to take notes. A lot of times when you write things down, it can be very helpful because, having, just the kind of writing things down and seeing what you're writing can be extremely helpful. And so I'd encourage you to do that. And then as questions come up about things that I'm talking about, if you have questions that you'd like to ask at the end of the webinar, you can put them in the chat as I'm talking, and then I will answer those questions at the end of the webinar. So, when you're looking for a position, there's a lot of things to keep in mind. And I'm going to talk about finding a position now, but also a lot of different things. But there's economic considerations, there's things that you may be doing and not doing that are going to maximize your marketability and the chance of getting a really good job. And so I'm going to talk about those today, and then I'm going to talk about the things that people do that are succeeding that are going to really help you not just get a job, but really put your effort and be happy kind of in the right places. So the first thing is, like, when you're looking for a job, you really need to know what your dream job is. And this, in my opinion, is one of the most basic considerations that attorneys often don't really realize and when they're planning their career and searching. And give me one second here. And so you need to really think about, like, what is it you want to do? Like, what's the most important thing to you? And for a lot of people, it's just working in a large law firm. And I don't think that's always the best choice. There's a lot of work that's involved. So anytime you go to most firms, you're going to be advanced based on how much work you do or how much business you bring in. And you're going to be spending the majority of your waking hours working, so in order to be competitive, you really need to know, like, what's important to you, like, what are you looking for and why is that important? And you really need to be like motivated by something deeper than just working in a certain type of firm or getting a high paying job, because you have to have something that's really like you're passionate about and gives you purpose and you believe is important. And you need to believe that this is your future and what you want to do. And if you don't have that sort of energy for what you're doing, then you're not going to be able to, if you don't believe in what you're doing, then you're not going to be able to really work very hard. You're not going to be able to put in the time necessary to succeed. And you're going to be up against people that are very passionate about what they're doing. And anytime you're in a firm, for example, there's going to be people that are passionate about what they're doing and people that aren't passionate about what they're doing. So something I see all the time, and it's just very, very common, is I see attorneys that come to BCG and they may have gone to a top law school and they may be at a top law firm, and someone has taken them aside, like a partner, or it's come up in a review that people say something to them along the lines of, you just don't seem to have the level of commitment, the level of enthusiasm, the level of drive that other associates have here. And then those people are let go from their jobs. When they're let go from their jobs, they go into interviews and they have the same lack of enthusiasm. They're just not really don't want to do whatever the work is. And then they don't get jobs. So doesn't matter where you went to law school. It doesn't matter the quality of the firm you're coming from. They go into interviews, they don't get jobs. And then many times things happen like they become contract attorneys, or they go into other professions, or they just kind of coast aimlessly throughout their career because they're just not passionate about this. And they believe that they should be in a large law firm, but they don't have the passion or drive to do it. And this happens all the time. This is extremely common. It's something that happens to lots and lots of attorneys at big firms, but it also happens to people that may not have gotten into the type of firms they want to go to out of law school, or currently not in the type of law firms that they want to be in, or maybe are in in-house jobs and other things where they're not passionate about it. And a lot of times when people are looking for jobs, they may be looking for jobs because they feel like they're working too hard. They feel like they're unhappy. They're trying to get away from something, like maybe they're at a large law firm and they think if they go to a boutique firm, they're not going to have as many hours. A lot of times people will look for new firms because their compensation isn't what they believe they should be making, or their peers are at different types of firms, or they just feel the compensation's inadequate for how much they're working. And then a lot of times they just have general discontent, like with working in a law firm, or whatever they're doing they don't like. And so they become people that will gossip negatively. They will resent work. They will resent the people giving them the work, and they're not really working towards something that they want. Like, you have to be like, whatever practice setting you're in, or whatever type of firm that you're in, you have to have some kind of goal, like to get somewhere. You have to really believe in whatever your goals are. And if you don't have any goals, then you're just going to be taken advantage of by others. I mean, people are going to hire you for positions, that you may not want, and you'll have to do that, and you'll always be unhappy. So you have to know what you want. You have to, really think about what you want. And what you want may not be a law firm. If you're in a law firm and you don't admire the type of partners and things you're working for and want to strive towards that, if you're not a partner, then you probably shouldn't do it. If you're at a law firm and you are a partner, like I spoke to one, yesterday, and he was kind of getting pushed around at a big firm making a few $1 million a year, but really kind of lost passion for where he's at, and that's difficult. But if you don't have things you want, or you're not moving towards something, then you're in trouble. And that's just not a good thing. I mean, think about it. If you're not motivated by something other than, motivated by something, or there's something about your practice area motivates you, or something about advancing motivates you, or something about where you're working motivates you, then that's not a good thing. I mean, you could, what you want could be being a law professor. What you want could be, I spoke to one attorney that was at a very awesome firm and making, I don't know, like this a couple of years ago, making like over $350,000, and his goal was to own a bike shop. I mean, that's okay. I mean, whatever you want, you should be going towards that, and you should want something. Other attorneys that are in law firms want to be prosecutors, or they want to work for the government, or they, for whatever reason, really want to work in house. So you have to know like what you want. And if you don't know what you want, then you're just going to constantly be like aimless. And you have to think about this. Like, what is it you really want? Do you want to like get some sort of achievement? Do you want to make more money? Like, what is it you want? And does that really motivate motivate you to get up in the morning and go to work every day? And are you excited about it? And does that give you like wind in your sails? And if it doesn't, there's nothing wrong with not liking the practice of law. I remember when I went to law school, and I'm from like a very old American family that came over here basically pretty much around the time of the Mayflower. Like it was only baby, but it doesn't matter. But I have generations like of attorneys in my family that have been, or generations of my family that have been attorneys. And I remember my grandmother said to me when I was going to law school, like, my father was attorney and he became a banker, and his father was an attorney and became a politician. And, so all these people in my family have become attorneys, but they didn't practice law. They wanted something else even back then. And that's okay. I mean, and she kind of knew that I probably wouldn't be continuing practicing law either. It's a certain type of personality and it's not something I wanted. And so without knowing what you want, you're going to make, bad decisions, and you're not going to, you'll look for jobs for the wrong reason, or you'll go to work in practice settings that don't motivate you. And, in different types of practice settings and different types of firms can give you a certain type of feeling about yourself. So, one example might be like if you're in a relationship that just doesn't work and it's not making you happy, and you want someone that's going to make you happy. I mean, you're going to know that kind of instinctively. I mean, that's why a lot of times people break up or marriages fall apart. It's not, you're spending time with someone that doesn't work for you. And so it's the same thing with a job. Like if you're in a job that doesn't work for you, you're going to have like a feeling of negativity each day. You're not going to, be happy, just like if you're with the wrong person. And if you're with the wrong person, a lot of people do their best to get out and they'll look for an out. That's why people have affairs. And, and so if you're in that kind of position, then, you're obviously doing something that might not be good for you. Maybe practicing law, like if you're a litigator, the conflict involved is not your natural strength, or writing is not something you enjoy. If you're a corporate attorney, maybe you don't like the detail and long hours, when you're doing deals. I mean, it's just, so many things can make you unhappy and put you in the wrong place. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, my goal here is not to talk you into practicing law. My goal is to make you happy. So what makes you happy? And a lot of times when attorneys are looking for positions, they look for positions and they do things because they're, they think that, maybe they should be in a firm that's more prestigious, or maybe they should be making money, but they're not necessarily passionate about the work that they're doing. If they're not passionate about the work they're doing, then none of this stuff is going to last very long. So, are you in a position where you're in a firm and you're looking for work and you always want to get new experiences and you're very excited about learning about your practice area? Or do you just think that working in a large law firm is what you should be doing? One thing that's very interesting to me, and I'll talk about it a little bit later in this presentation, but when attorneys are looking for jobs, you can often tell like how enthusiastic they are, how much they like it. Like corporate attorneys will write down all their transactions and they'll have a transaction sheet, and litigators will have another sheet where they talk about all the different types of litigation they're doing. So they're kind of tracking like all the different types of work that they've done, and very enthusiastic about it, writing things down and wanting to get experience doing different things. So a litigator will be very excited to learn to do depositions and go into trials, and the corporate attorney will be very excited to be leading transactions and having a bigger role. And these are the kind of personality types that tend to succeed, and the ones that don't, like just think that they're working a regular job, don't. So you'll see people a lot of times that will have a resume and they'll be at a large law firm, and then they'll talk about like all this pro bono work they do. And sometimes the description of the pro bono work is actually longer than the description of whatever they're doing, if they're a corporate attorney or they're a litigator. And so that tells me that maybe that person doesn't want to be in a law firm. Maybe they want to be doing like public interest work instead. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's where their enthusiasm lies, then that's what they should be doing. And there's a lot of jobs that if you're not excited about a law firm, that could really make you happy. And that could be, for example, working for the government as a prosecutor. There's all sorts of, or other types of jobs as in administrative roles or bureaucratic roles in the government. And there's tons of those. They're just all over. There's teaching jobs for attorneys. You can teach in law schools, but you can also teach in universities and community colleges. There's all sorts of public interest jobs that are often very competitive because there's a lot of people that are motivated to do that, even for a lower salary. And then there's tens of thousands of law firms. I mean, in BCG, like there are over like 30,000 law firms that we market people to. There's solo practices, like where they're looking for an attorney. There's, you can start your own firm and get more independence and control your income and not have to work with for other people. There's jobs in smaller markets that offer more, stability in terms of maybe not working as hard and actually being an attorney. Like if you're in a small market, like it's a big deal to be an attorney. But if you're in, people will look up to you that you're an attorney. If you're in a larger market, like no one really cares. Like you're just okay, you're an attorney. I mean, it's not as big of a deal. So there's so many things that you can do that may not involve doing what you're doing. Even in different practice areas or all sorts of things or different lifestyles. And, so you need to think of like what's going to make me happy. Like you have to like understand, like, do I want to be just one of 200 attorneys in a big office, or would I like to work directly with someone, or would I like to have my own firm? And people make these decisions all the time. And why are these decisions important? Because you have to get up and feel good about what you're doing. Like you don't want to get up every morning and have a significant other that you don't feel good about and doesn't make you feel good about yourself. Like think about when you're around people, there's always going to be certain people that if you're around them, you just don't feel good about yourself. And then there's other people that if you're around them, they make you feel good about yourself. There's jobs where if you're in the job, you're going to feel good about yourself. And there's, all sorts of practice settings that may be different that you'll feel good about yourself. So there's absolutely no sense. And I'm just going to say it to you right now. There's no sense in doing something that you're unhappy with. Now, it's okay to go to a firm and get trained for 5 years and have to do grueling work and everything if you're going to learn something that you can take to another practice setting or firm that where you'll do well. There's always a learning curve involved in anything, and it's not always pleasant, but you have to think, are you motivated by something bigger, or does whatever you're doing get you excited about your career? And there are attorneys where like the largest law firms or the most competitive boutiques or something to strive for. Like, I see attorneys all the time that will start out literally at like a 3-person law firm. And then, their whole goal is to get more and more sophisticated work and work in bigger and bigger firms. And because they're so enthusiastic about it and because they love whatever they're doing so much, they do get there. And you can do that too if that's what motivates you. If you want to practice at the highest levels of the legal profession with the best attorneys and that's your goal, that's a good thing. But you may find happiness not in that type of role. You may find it working in smaller regional firms or in other practice settings. Like if you're unhappy like in a practice setting where you have to write down your hours and that there's no sense. I mean, there's no sense of that. There's also no sense of if you don't like being an attorney to continue doing it. Just to be very clear with you about what being an attorney is about taking pretty much any client and taking their side and feeling good about being like someone that's helping another person or another company and just being very excited about it. That's what it is. Being an attorney is about taking on other people's problems and trying to solve them. And that may not make you happy. Like you may be happier doing something where you're not taking on other people's problems and different types of people's problems and different companies' problems. And if that's not what motivates you, then, why are you doing this? Because that's the whole role. If you work for the government, you're representing the government. And if you work for a public interest organization, you're representing the public interest organization. I mean, you're representing someone no matter where you go as an attorney. So does representing and taking the side of someone else motivate you? Because typically, like if you're working in a law firm, what you're doing is you're taking the side of someone that either is less powerful than you or doesn't have the resources, like doing immigration law or family law or something, or you're taking the side of someone that's more powerful than you, a company or something. So you need to learn, does that make you happy? Does taking on other people's problems, excuse me, make you happy? And that's the whole goal of an attorney. And that's the whole profession, is taking on other people's problems and representing them. And you have to think very, very hard about that because, that may not be something that motivates you. So, when you're looking for your dream job, you have to understand, like, what are you passionate about? Like, are you passionate about something that has nothing to do with being an attorney and the reasons to be an attorney that I talked about? Like, many people go to law school literally just because they know that that's a prestigious profession and pays a lot of money. That's an okay reason to go to law school, but if you go to law school and that's your what you like, you have to understand, like, is that something that you're really passionate about? Is that something that is it ultimately something? Oh, for goodness sakes, give me a second. Um, is that something that gets you very excited? And if it's not, um, then that's a problem. So, and then the thing is, like, a lot of people feel um, mm, um, like called to do something with their law degree. Like there's something that they learn about in law school that they really like, or there's some sort of work that they do, um, in the summer that gets them excited, or there's some type of job that they would really, really like to have, and they feel like they're literally called to do something with it. When I was in college, it was very funny. There was a woman that was like in my college class that felt like her whole goal was to be like a federal district judge. This is, crazy. I'm sorry, in college when I was a freshman, and she ended up doing that. That was like she thought that was her calling. And I don't know where she got the idea to do that, but she felt like that was her calling from the second she walked into college. And sometimes people feel called to do different things. Like typically, like someone that might go to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office is just feels like that's like the ultimate thing, and they think that way from the second they get into law school. So you have to feel like, is there something that is really motivating all these decisions? And I'm just going to be very clear with you right now that if your whole goal is just to make money, there's lots of ways that you can make more money than being an attorney. There's tons of ways. I mean, you can start companies. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, like doing things that don't require even an education, that if you seek them out and they motivate, you can do them. And so you have to think, what motivates you. Is it, sometimes people are motivated by challenge. Sometimes people have a very big motivation for some to do something prestigious. Sometimes people have a motivation to make some sort of contribution to the world. Sometimes people are very motivated by being able to write things on the behalf of others. And sometimes people are motivated by helping companies be more successful. Like when you talk to like a very successful corporate attorney, a lot of times, like they love being a corporate attorney. They love going out and meeting with companies and strategizing with them and help them save money and helping them get into better situations. I mean, they love it. I mean, that's what motivates them. Like a first year corporate attorney that may be headed for a really good career is always like looking for little loopholes and advantages and things for their clients, and then loves getting calls from companies about like to get advice and things, and litigators is the same way. And do you like that? I mean, is that something that makes you feel good, or is it something that you don't really care about? Sometimes people really love research and writing, and they can't believe that they're getting paid for it. Like you may have loved to write papers and things when you were in college and law school, and just really love doing that. And when you're doing that, you feel good about yourself, and it makes you happy, and time flies. Or sometimes people may prefer corporate work that's different, and sometimes people want to work with other people and be close to other people, and some people don't. And sometimes people prefer to like work alone, or without working with others. And and there's just all sorts of different things. And practice areas can expose you to that as well. So a family law attorney is obviously working a lot and talking to people and getting involved in individual conflicts and things. And someone that's a litigator may enjoy that more than working on behalf of big companies. So, what motivates you? What is something that excites you? And do you want to be in like a big market, like where there's a lot of stress, and does that get you motivated? Or do you want to work is it important to you to do your profession, but then and you like your job, but you want to have a place where you're where spending time with your family and as hobbies and things makes you just as happy as practicing law. And I'll tell you another thing that's kind of interesting too is, a lot of the most successful attorneys do have outside interests. So they love what they're doing, but then they have outside interest. I was talking to one last night that whenever he gets time, he loves to go fly fishing. That makes him really happy. And then, but spending time with his family makes him really happy too. But practicing law makes him really happy. So, and so he's a happy person and has a nice life. But then there's other people that aren't happy, and a lot of people that aren't happy, are getting up to work each day, and they're going into work and they don't feel fulfilled, and then because they don't feel good about themselves at work, when they come home, oftentimes they don't feel good there either. So their whole lives are just unhappy. I mean, think about it. Like, does going to, work each day, do you feel like you need to come home and drink or smoke pot or whatever, or get medications because you're just not feeling good? And all those things are signs. Or are you having a lot of problems in your personal life because you just carry the stress of your job at home, or you're just unfulfilled and generally unhappy? I mean, this is the case for a lot of people. A lot of times people just are very unhappy, and that's not good. So, you have to know kind of what motivates you, and what you want, because you need to be someplace where you feel like you have wind in your sails. If you were in a bad relationship, you would feel like you don't have wind in your sails. You wouldn't feel good about your significant other. And if you're in a bad job that's not good for you, then you're going to be unhappy. So you need to really think about like what makes you happy. And there's nothing wrong with not making as much money as people in major law firms. I mean, what does the money mean if you're unhappy? Like, it's just, you have to go to work each day and really like what you're doing. And people respect people that like their jobs, and you should get up every day and feel good about what you're doing. So what is going to do that for you? And you have to decide that. And, frankly, I would say more than 50% of attorneys like what they're doing. They think it's fun. They enjoy it. And if you enjoy it, the nice thing about practicing law is you can do it well into your 80s. I was reading an article about it was a hit piece, but in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, about Gloria Allred, and it said she was 82 years old. And I've represented attorneys before that have been like in their 80s looking for jobs. And and I was even representing a guy that was merging his law firm, and he was like 85 and still working and loved it. So you have to, what is your dream job? What motivates you? What makes you happy? And if you write down the things you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, if the work you're doing is not something you enjoy, or the practice setting is not something you enjoy, or the legal market you're in is not something you enjoy, and is not what you're, something that's really important to you, then that's a problem. So just think about it. Is this something that motivates you and makes you happy? Do you want, if you're a young attorney, do you want more and more responsibility? I mean, what motivates you? So you need to think about all these things, because they're extremely important. And if you don't have wind in your sails, you're never going to do well at anything, because you're going to be competing against people that like what they're doing. And if you compete against people that like what they're doing, then firms are going to like them better, and they're going to advance. And if clients are going to like them better, because they're going to want to share what they know. And but if you don't like what you're doing, then that's not good. I mean, you want to be in a situation where you like what you're doing and where it's fulfilling your dreams, because again, you're going to be competing against people that like what they're doing, and those people are always going to win. They're going to win in transactions, they're going to win in litigation, they're going to advance, and all these things. So you need to know what your dream job is, and it doesn't matter what it is. Sometimes people will go into their dream job, and it doesn't pay a lot of money, or it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere, but then they will become incredibly successful. Like, someone becomes a professor and starts writing books and going on all these talks and making millions of dollars a year just because they did what they were excited about. So that's something you need to do. I'll just tell you a personal story. When I was like first like exposed to what recruiters do, I was like, this just checks all the boxes for me. It's exactly what I want. It's something I can get behind and work really, really hard at. And I don't know what appealed to me about it exactly. I mean, it had a lot to do with my personality and things that I saw that I could improve in the market. But you have to find something like that. And this is an example of a profession that you could find, or just all sorts of different things. But you need to find what motivates you. And then also, when you're searching for a job, you have to manage your expectations. So there's nothing wrong with dreaming big and believing that you can work in a large law firm and so forth. But a lot of times people have unrealistic expectations for their career, and they're constantly disappointed. So, attorneys that don't get into large law firms are very disappointed in themselves and believe that they shouldn't do it. And they keep applying and nothing's happening. So they're constantly disappointed. And this is very common. I mean, I'm sure usually on these webinars, we have questions related to that. And, getting the job that you want can be about a lot of different things. It can be about the market you're in. It can be about whether or not your practice area is doing well. It can be all about all sorts of things. So, right now, like at all times, there's certain practice areas that are doing really well, and there's others that aren't. So sometimes if you're searching when a practice area is not in a lot of demand, you may not be getting a good reception from the market. But if that changes, you may get a good reception. I mean, it just depends. I mean, there's certain practice areas right now that people are applying for jobs and they're just getting tons of interviews and offers. And there's others where nothing is happening. And, there's other practice areas where if you're trying to get a job in a major market, it's going to be very difficult. But if you're trying to do it in smaller, it'll be easier. When you're looking for jobs, especially as a young attorney, firms are going to be interested, when you're just out of school and your transcript, they're going to look for weaknesses and hire the best people that they can. The larger law firms, because they pay so much money, get a lot of applicants and will, do very well when they're searching for jobs. So talking about expectations. So a lot of times people will be very focused on trying to make it into a large law firm very early in their career. And that's not always possible. And so you shouldn't necessarily feel if you're not achieving that right now, but you should never feel badly about where you're at, because where you can go with your credentials and everything that you're trying to do in the long run is, you have that possibility. So what does that mean? So people typically get out of law school at the age of around 25. And so if you get out of the law school at the age of 25, you actually have quite a bit of time to practice law. I mean, most people will practice at least 50 years. I talk to attorneys all the time that, want to keep practicing. So I was talking to for example, a partner in a large law firm yesterday, very, very successful one. And he's at a firm, and a lot of large law firms will require people to retire at the age of 65, but he wants to keep practicing. So my point is that this is a long career. And so if you feel like you're not doing very well early in your career, that's really no reason that, you should feel badly about yourself, because you have a lot of time to actually improve and to get into large law firms. You can, once you're, 10 years out of law school and you start developing business, or you're even 5 years out of law school and you have a very well-defined expertise, then you can start getting into large law firms, not regardless of your educational qualifications, but you will have a lot of options. So, you may have credential weakness right now, but it's not something for you to really worry about and feel badly about. You just need to keep pushing through, and you can always overcome them. The people that have the most passion in this profession and get into practice areas where they can get into larger law firms can do it. And you really, almost regardless of who you are right now, that's really your goal. You can eventually get there. It was kind of an interesting story. There was a woman in Chicago, and she had started out at a small law firm, and her whole career goal was to get in to work at Latham & Watkins, and which is a wonderful firm, and I can't say enough good things about Latham & Watkins. I just think it's a great place. But that was her goal from an early attorney, when she was in law school. And she started out at a small firm, and then she went to a little bit bigger of a firm. And then when she got to be about 10 years out, she started working with a recruiter in our Chicago office, and the recruiter kept encouraging her to develop more and more business and to get in a better and better place. And then after about 5 or 6 years of this, she built up a decent sized book of business of $2.5 million. And Latham & Watkins finally interviewed her and said, keep trying and get your billing rate up and get more business. And so she kept doing that, and eventually after I don't know, probably 16 years, ended up getting into Latham & Watkins, which is just awesome as a partner. So you can overcome all this stuff. But early on, there is credential weakness. The law school you go to can influence things. The grades you got in law school can influence things. If you weren't a summer associate, usually at a large law firm, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a job at a large law firm when you come out of law school. All these things can, affect you. Sometimes people have a difficult time passing the bar. Like in California, it's very common for people to fail 2, 3, 4 times. I mean, it just, happens. And so that can hold you back. And then not being at a good law firm right now can hold you back, but you can always improve. Or many times people get fired. I mean, it's very common. If you've been fired from a job, I'll just let you know that most attorneys will get fired at some point in their career. It's not something you should feel badly about. It's something you should learn about. And, anytime any of these bad things happen, like you can look at it in a couple of different ways, or when you're held back by something, you can look at it a couple of different ways. One is to feel defeated and badly about yourself. And the other is to use it kind of as rocket fuel to make yourself, to give you more motivation to do better and better and better. And that's what the most successful people do. They look at things that have happened that are negative in their past, and it gets them more and more motivated. I mean, look at just someone like Donald Trump that has had all these bad things happen to him, been prosecuted for crimes, and he's been bankrupt multiple times, his companies, and all these bad things have happened to him. But instead of just being defeated, he's someone that, continually uses all these setbacks to motivate him more and more and more. And think about that. How many people do you know that are defeated that give up? And you should not do the same thing. You should use any negative thing in your background or any negative thing that's happened to you as rocket fuel to motivate you and to make you angry and want to work harder. And so, you can move past any credential weakness, no matter where you are right now, no matter what has happened to you in the past, no matter what failures you've had. Look at the most successful people. I mean, Michael Jordan didn't make one of the best basketball players at all time, didn't make his high school basketball team, but he used that as motivation to practice and practice and practice and practice and practice and get better. And this is what, most people do. One of the best, that are successful, one of the best ways is, to overcome credential weaknesses. You have kind of two really good paths you can use. One is to become very, very specialized in an area of law that other people aren't specialized in. And the other is to start developing clients and business. So anybody that becomes very specialized will start having a good opportunity to work in larger law firms, or anybody that generates business will always, the more business you generate and the higher your billing rate, you'll always have the opportunity to get into larger law firms. So, when you start out, you'll have weaknesses in your credentials. Oftentimes you may be 10 or 15 years out, and you may have weaknesses in your credentials, but you can always turn it around. I mean, anybody can. You can turn it around if you've been practicing for 20 years. So you need to just understand that there's going to be weaknesses in your background. And my two biggest suggestions for you, if you're trying to turn around those weaknesses, are to become an expert in something. Whatever you become an expert in is going to put you in a position where you're going to have access to more jobs, where you're going to be able to just continually get better and better and better. I've seen people, and so many interesting stories, of people that have become experts. I've seen people become an expert in like family law and get really, really good at that and become certified and all these different things. And then suddenly, they get a job at a major US law firm or trust in the states working for, smaller people, and then getting into bigger trust in the states issues and getting jobs at major law firms, getting expertise in one form of corporate transactions, like healthcare transactions, and working for an in-house company doing that, and all of a sudden getting a job with a major US law firm, or becoming some sort of policy expert in something for the government, and then being able to take that to major US law firms. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do when you become an expert in something, and how you can move up. And then also when you start developing your own work and your own business. So, people will often start out at small firms and do very, very well at attracting clients and learning how to do that, and then move to larger and larger firms. And pretty soon, they're some of the largest law firms in the country. And I've seen people do that have failed the bar multiple times. I've seen all these people turn around their careers, but you have to become, not only do you have to like what you're doing, but you need to become an expert in your practice area if you want to continually get into better firms. And I don't care what that practice area is. Most practice areas you can move up. And then, I've seen people do it in immigration, move into major US law firms like Wilson Sonsini and others. And so all these things you can do if you become an expert. And then when you develop business, like you're completely in control of your career. So developing business is something you could learn, you start learning about when you're a young attorney, or you can learn it when you've been practicing a long time. And I've seen attorneys like that have been practicing for, 20 plus years and not had any business, and learn how to do that and just have incredible careers. So there's all these things you can do. Now, there's also a lot of behaviors that you need to learn when you want to move up between firms. And you also need to learn these to be successful wherever you are. And as I told you earlier, there's always a lot of things that can keep you from getting the jobs you want, which could be timing. Maybe you're not quite ready for that. The economic conditions could be such that firms aren't really doing a lot of hiring in your practice area. There could be past mistakes, but there's also a lot of things you can control. And I'm going to talk to you right now about, kind of what the most successful, attorneys are doing. So there's a lot of negative patterns of behavior that people get involved in, and that kind of decreases their marketability because employers can see it and they can pick up on it, and they can, decide when they're looking at you or talking to you, maybe working with someone like, hiring someone like you is not a good thing for them to do. It's not something that they should be doing. And what I'm going to talk to you about right now are some of the most, obvious things that employers pick up on. I'm going to talk to you about things that people do in interviews that prevents them from getting jobs. And so what I'm going to talk to you about right now is actually very important because most people, when they go on interviews, it's, I've analyzed it before, but if they go on interviews like without me prepping them for an interview, their odds are typically like 15% or so. This is scattered across all practice areas all over the country of actually getting to an offer. And then when I prepare them for interviews, I kind of teach them how to avoid these red flags, and then the percentage goes up dramatically, the people that get jobs. So, there's all sorts of things and behaviors I'll talk to you about right now that kind of telegraph flakiness, like a lack of stability, lack of hard work, and I'm going to talk to you in, long-term vision and things that firms will pick up on. So one of the most important things to kind of think about is job hopping. So people will often move between firms quite often, and not for like compelling reasons. Like moving to a bigger firm is a good reason, or trying to work on bigger clients is a good reason. But a lot of times people will just move firms for stupid reasons. And you never really know what they are, but if they move firms for stupid reasons, you have to think about if someone's moving a lot and they go to your firm, well, an employer that's looking at you is going to think, well, this person has been at 3 firms in 3 years or 3 firms in 5 years. The odds are they're going to come here and probably leave as well. And so when you're trying to look for a job, you have to think of, how does my resume look? Do I look like someone that's going to stay there a long time, or do I look like someone that's going to leave? And when you look like someone that's going to leave, the reason that's not a good thing is because the employer knows you'll probably leave them as well. And when people leave firms, they're leaving them for usually a couple of different reasons. And one is that they're trying to get into a better firm. Maybe there's not enough work at their existing firm. But a lot of times what an employer is going to think is that, you're leaving because maybe your work was criticized, you're being pushed out, or maybe you just aren't going to be happy anywhere. Maybe you don't like practicing law. So that's one thing to think about. Like if you're moving, you should be moving up or getting out of a situation that's not under your control, because people will go to places and they will make it work and others won't. I remember when I first started BCG, I was lucky. 2 of my first hires, one was a woman that had been at her previous job for 8 years, and the other had been there like 16 years. And both of them stayed. One of them stayed like 8 or 9 years, and then the other one stayed like 17 years. And people that commit to jobs are like that. And then during that same period of time, I probably hired over 50 recruiters, and a lot of them have been at their previous jobs for like a year or two, and they almost always did the same thing at my firm. And then not only that, but there's always a period when people are leaving a job, meaning that they're not happy or whatever, and they're leaving, and then they become less productive, and they would do not as good of a job with the candidates, and they kind of be a negative influence on people around them. Another thing you got to be very careful of in your career is leaving a job without another one lined up. So anytime you have a gap in employment that does not look good, a lot of attorneys are in that position, and most of them will be in that position at some time in their career. So it's not something you should feel badly about. But if you're unemployed, then it suggests that you'll walk off the job at your next firm, or but most likely people will think that you got fired for something that you did wrong, or maybe you just didn't want to practice law and took some sort of sabbatical. And it's important that you never have gaps on your resume if you can avoid it. Very, very important, because firms will make assumptions about you. And if you were a firm, just think about these 2 things. Would you want someone that looks like they're going to be stable when you're hiring them? So if you're comparing someone that's stable as opposed to someone that's not stable, you would probably choose the person that's stable. And then if someone's unemployed, and you're also interviewing people that are employed, you're obviously going to probably prefer the person that's employed. So you need to think about all of these decisions and things, and how does your resume look to employers? Because if you're unemployed, like you're not a hot catch. Like they don't, it's different. But if you're employed, you are. And then another thing is, a lot of times attorneys will we'll try to move jobs, and different practice areas sometimes. And I can see the reasons for doing that. Like litigators like to write, people that are natural with that, corporate attorneys like, minutia and transactions and things, but moving practice areas are, is the sign. Sometimes people will, try to relocate to markets where they don't have any ties and haven't even taken the bar there. And again, if you were a law firm, who would you choose to hire? Would you choose to hire someone that's in that market already and has family there and reasons for being there? Or would you hire someone that's already there and has all these connections and stuff? Or someone that's taken the bar versus someone that hasn't? Sometimes people will look at, and most law firms will search your social media sites, and they'll see what you're posting there. And if your content doesn't look good there, they don't like what they see, that can hurt you. I was working on this like firm merger not too long ago. Not necessarily a firm merger. It was like 4 or 5 attorneys moving to another law firm, and one of the attorneys, her dream had been to be a corporate attorney, and she had moved up and had gotten the job at this good firm as a corporate attorney. But they went back and they saw her postings on some social media site where she talked about, how she didn't always like practicing law, that it could be a grind or something. And so she'd gotten this dream job, and then all of a sudden, because of that, the firm didn't hire her when she came over. Sometimes when, an attorney is fired or asked to leave a law firm like that can be a bad sign if you were let go. Law firms, this is just something to be very aware of. Some large law firms will lay people off when things get slow. And when they try to go to other law firms, the law firms have a choice. They can hire someone that's currently employed, or they can hire someone that may have been asked to leave. And the problem with being asked to leave law firms is if you're asked to leave, then, obviously the law firm doesn't believe that you're going to be profitable compared to other people, or maybe you weren't working as hard, and maybe you didn't have the right connections. And so if you're at a firm where it looks like you could be in trouble, you should always be looking for jobs. You should always be looking for jobs if you feel like your career is any way threatened or something that could happen. So you have to kind of look, think about all these red flags on your resume and try to avoid them if you want to be hireable. And very important. And then you need to have like green light behaviors that are positive. So what you can do is you need to develop and have excuse me, these positive types of things on your resume. So you need to look like you have a strong work ethic and you work very hard. So certain people will their resumes will come through that they work very hard. You need to, and you should have a strong work ethic wherever you are. You should have when you talk about where you're working, when you're asking, when you're talking to other firms, you should always be saying, I'm very grateful that I've had this opportunity. There's a lot of good things about the firm, but I want to get more, better experience, or the work's slow and, I can't control it, or, but you have to look like you're loyal towards your current employer, and that you would be the same thing at the new employer. When a new employer hires you, by the way, they need to think that like this job that they're offering is exactly where you've been trying to go, like exactly what you need to be happy. And they need to believe that, because they'll be comparing you to others. You need to look like you have a commitment to your practice area. So what does that mean? It means that, a lot of times when someone will, be looking for a job, their resume will talk about all these different practice areas and experience that they've done when the law firm's trying to hire someone in one practice area. So, a corporate attorney that also says they do litigation and IP doesn't look as good as someone that just does corporate. So, you need to think about how your resume reads. And this is a big mistake, by the way. 80% of attorneys make this mistake on their resume. So they're applying for a certain type of job, and yet their resume says they do 3 different things. Instead, when you're applying for a job, your resume should lead with whatever the practice area that the firm's hiring, and it should talk as much as possible about that, and then eliminate things that don't show a commitment to the practice area. And then, you need to look like you are committed to being an attorney and want to be an attorney. You need to, look like you have staying power in the profession and, against difficult circumstances. So certain attorneys will go to firms and they will make it work and others won't. Certain attorneys will experience setbacks and they'll make it work and others won't. And certain people will have enthusiasm about their career and they'll have that and that will come up when people are interviewing them and they'll be able to talk with a lot of enthusiasm about whatever they're doing and whatever experience they've got. And other people will go into interviews and won't have that. They'll just be kind of like, I'm here to work. And who would you hire if you were an attorney? When firms are interviewing you, they want to see that, you're asking questions about what the firm's doing. You're excited about it. You like what you're doing and you want to, ask questions about the type of work you'd be doing. You want to talk about what you like doing, things that you've done well. The best attorneys, by the way, like people that are like partners in the largest law firms often, like they will talk with a lot of enthusiasm about, these deals that they've done or litigation that they've won and all these sorts of things. And if you don't have that kind of enthusiasm, that's a problem. And then, then there's all sorts of interpersonal and soft skills. Like, you need to come across that you're someone that will get along with others and whoever you're working with, like who would you want to hire? Someone that looks like they could be a personality problem or someone that doesn't. Anytime I talk to attorneys that, have been having kind of historical issues with their careers, like problems, they'll always talk negatively about the people that they've worked with and or whatever and they will those are the people that usually don't advance and then then you need to look like you're working really really hard wherever you're at and whatever it is you're doing the best you can and you need to look like someone that does that and you need to be able to talk about that and then being appreciative of opportunities and talking about things that way, having confidence in what you do, like believing wherever you go, like they couldn't do better than you. I mean, there's people that go into interviews and do that. And then, having, a very, solid presence, including, wherever you're, being seen about, whatever you're doing. So, regardless of what practice area you're in, you should look like for clients and firms, like the best possible choice for them to hire. You should look like someone that's giving talks, joining associations, like writing articles, like all these sorts of things and have a resume that talks about that and that maybe your firm resume shows that. I mean, I encounter people all the time that it's just absolutely insane. Like they've done so many different things in their practice area and been so like, such a strong like person and they're right doing all these things and building up their resume. And then on the website of the firm, they have all this information about things that they've done that they're very excited about. And so those are the people that get hired compared to the people that don't. So, that's one reason I talked earlier about the importance of being able to have passion about what you're doing. And so all this stuff, like when you start showing passion, that's who firms want to hire compared to the ones that don't. So these are all kind of, very green light things you want to look at. You want to look at having a resume and a experience. It looks like you're very enthusiastic. You want to look like an expert in your practice area. And all these sorts of things are going to make you much stronger than people that don't have that. And then this is just, kind of basic stuff. But, if you work hard, then you're going to develop an expertise in whatever you're doing. One of the benefits of going to large law firms is you're going to be able to work hard and become an expert in your practice area, many times in a very niche part of a practice area. But whatever practice area you're in, especially, your first 5 years, I mean, what you're doing is you're actually getting paid to become an expert in something. So, which is very, very good. I mean, when you think about it, like whatever your practice area, someone is training you to become an expert and to really have an expertise that other attorneys don't. And so, when you get out of law school, like say you go to, I don't know what a big market would be, like Chicago, there might be in large law firms like 50 attorneys of your class year doing real estate. But after 7 or 8 years, there might only be like, 10 or 15 or whatever. I mean, maybe it's 100 and there's 30 or whatever, but there's very few people left. So, becoming an expert makes you more marketable. But you need to be very interested in whatever you're doing. So your practice area needs to be something that you really like. And I don't know what that is, but whatever that practice area is, and you become an expert in it and really enjoy it, then you're going to become much more marketable. And so you need to, become an expert in some sort of practice area if you're trying to be in different size markets. Now, some smaller markets, the attorneys will do all sorts of different practice areas because there's not enough work available. But in most cases, like when you become an expert in something, you're going to be much more successful. People want to hire people that are more specialized than less. And it would be the same way, if you had some sort of horrible disease. So say you had, I don't know, you had lung cancer, you would want to go see a doctor that specialized in lung cancer as opposed to someone that did 15 different things. And then when you hired the lung cancer doctor, you would want to see someone that had been on committees and written papers and had presentations and contributed to textbooks. I mean, whatever it is, you would try to hire an expert. And that's the same way that clients are and firms are. And so being specialized is just very important. Your resume needs to look like you're a specialist. And this is a big mistake that people make. I mean, they're applying for a certain type of job, but again, they talk about all these different practice areas they've done because they're proud of it. But in most cases, your resume needs to look like you're an expert, because that's if you look at jobs, regardless of the website you're on, if you look at jobs on LinkedIn or Indeed or Law Crossing, you're always going to see the almost all the positions are looking for someone to do one thing. So why would you have a resume that talks about how you do all these different things? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, so you need to look like an expert. That's who you would hire if you were looking for a doctor. That's who clients hire. That's who law firms hire. So, and then learning what you want to do, and really looking focused on it is going to increase your marketability. And it doesn't matter what your practice area is. Like I was talking to an attorney on Monday that was hiring people, and he needed someone that specialized in evictions, and but just a certain type of eviction. So looking for a very rare person. If he found that person, he would hire them. And so it doesn't matter the practice area. You need to look like an expert. And then when you're getting work and wherever you are, you need to try to do the best job, and you need to look sophisticated. You need to look like you're an expert. The first firm I worked at was called Quinn Emanuel. I mean, I guess it's still Quinn Emanuel. And they had hired a very well-known entertainment attorney. So there were people at that firm that wanted to become specialists in entertainment law because it's kind of sexy. And so all these different associates were seeking out this entertainment partner that had a lot of work and really trying to get as much work as they could from him. So they could become experts in that, even they were doing commercial litigation. So you need to, and then they were able to build up their resumes to look like entertainment attorneys. And then, what I talked about earlier is whatever your practice area is, like when you do different things, like the best attorneys will always like write down what they did. They will be very proud that they worked on a case and wrote a summary judgment motion. They'll be very proud that they worked on different transactions, and they'll have like second page of the resume. And is that something that you're doing, or you're just writing down that you were an attorney at this firm? Because looking enthusiastic about what you do that's exactly who you would want to hire if you were hiring someone, to do anything. I mean, you would want to see that. So you should be writing down the things you work on and being proud of them, proud of the role, and then thinking, how can I get better experience? And I will just be very blunt with you that the attorneys from the largest law firms that do this get, probably 3 or 4 times more likely to get jobs. Attorneys that are trying to move up, that are documenting all the stuff they're doing in their practice area, are much more likely to get jobs. So you should always be thinking about like, what have you done that looks, in your practice area? And then you write it down and you make that part of your biography, because you're proud of it and you love what you're doing and you want to show people, your enthusiasm. And so very few people do this, but the ones that do, that document the work that they've done in the practice area that they're doing, will always do much better than those who don't. And and then some of the stuff like that's just very important when you're applying to jobs is having very clear and substantive descriptions of their practice area with no typos or punctuation errors or anything. And a lot of attorneys make these mistakes, and because they make these mistakes, they don't get anywhere near as far as they would without doing that. So now you can run things through a Grok, which is from X, or DeepSeek, or ChatGPT to make things look perfect. But that's something you need to do. And then the best attorneys will often they'll have writing samples that they're very proud of, ready to go, and all these different things, and they'll have references and people that can speak very highly of them that they're willing to talk about. And so having all this stuff and being proud of the work you've done, and references and stuff can be very helpful. And then and then people will have writing samples ready to go, and all this sort of stuff. And so then the next thing that's very important to be successful and to be able to get jobs is having connections. So who do you know, and how do are there people that you're impressing in your career that can help you? Everyone should be trying to build as many connections as they can. So you should be trying to connect with people and get to know people out in the legal community. And the more you can, the better you'll do. Any place you work, you should look at the people you're working for as clients, and that's who they are. Like any partner you're working for as a client. The people that you may be representing are clients as well. The people that that you come across when you're practicing at other firms are connections. And so you always want to be trying to cultivate connections. A lot of people, very successful attorneys in different practice areas, like corporate, for example, like, their connections, like Rolodex is like a very big thing, and they can help their clients with that. I mean, literally, like that's a lot of what corporate attorneys do. They can connect people to people that can help other people, and because of all these people that so that can be very helpful. Like having a lot of connections, and very few people like think about the importance of this. It's important not just for getting jobs, but it's important for getting clients. Like most attorneys that are able to bring in clients have a lot of connections, and people will refer people to them. So every person that you meet is a connection, and then past employers are connections. Judges you may have clerked with are connections. People, that you may be working for, if your firm doesn't need you for some reason, are connections. People that you work for, I've seen people use law professors and things as connections that will speak very highly of them. Professional organizations, colleagues, so anybody you work with really at any firm is a connection, or any job is a connection, because those people will speak about you highly later. So, if you're 28 years old and working for a law firm, and people look at you as someone that works very hard and is committed and really likes what you're doing, like those people will be in positions to help you later. They will be partners, or they will be general counsels at companies. So everybody you're associating with is a connection. So what kind of image are you portraying to the people that you work with, and that you've worked with in the past? What do they think about you? Like, what can they say about you? And so you really want to make sure that anybody you're working with is to the extent you can, that you're impressing them, even your peers, people that are younger than you, people that are older than you, people that are in positions of power. Like everybody you're working with needs to be a connection. I told this story in the webinar last week, but I thought it was kind of interesting. John Quinn, who started Quinn Emanuel, they used to have these meetings with all the associates like once a month to talk about business or cases they've been working on, or how to develop business. And I remember John Quinn once said, I mean, this is, a guy that built 1,000+ person law firm. He said his biggest regret was, not making better connections with people that he went to Harvard Law School with, and then the people he worked with earlier in his career. Like if he had made better connections, then he believed that he would be more successful at this. So that just shows you, the importance of this. Now, this is not a pitch to use recruiters, but you can use recruiters, or you can use, you can read about some stuff on your own, like you're learning about how to be successful right now. So, listening to a webinar like this is extremely important. Watching this stuff is very, very smart of you, because it's giving you tools and teaching you things that I know that I've been doing for 25 years. So these are a pitch for recruiters, but I'm not really here to pitch recruiters. This isn't that important. But what does a recruiter do? Like a good recruiter will be able to find your strengths sort of in the way that I've been talking to you about today, like making you look like an expert, uh, framing your experience in a way, recognizing your strengths, and all that sort of thing. So that's what a good recruiter could do for you. But just as important, like a partner in your law firm, that you're working for, people that you've worked in the past, can help you and bring out your strengths to others. And my point to you here is really, you need to be in a position where other people are talking positively about you. So one of the benefits of a good recruiter that people can't do a lot of times on their own when they're searching is a recruiter can go in and like analyze your experience and say a lot of very positive things about you. Whereas, someone, if you do things on your own, couldn't do it, or a good reference can do the same thing. So that's what I like to do to people. Like I try to pull out like their strengths and things that I've talked to you about today and make them look much stronger. But that, again, that's not something, all the recruiters always need to do for you. It's something you need to find, that you can have other people do as well in front of your strengths. So the other thing is just, you have to believe in yourself. So you have to be confident. You have to think that you offer value to employers, that you offer value to clients, and you need to really believe in yourself, because people that get hired and people that get clients are people that believe in themselves, and they people pick that up when they talk to them, and people want to hire people that are confident and believe in what they're doing and can do a really good job. And it's the same thing with clients. It's what you would want if you were hiring someone and they really believed in what they were doing. It was what you would want if you were hiring a doctor to help you and you had something serious wrong. If you would want to hire someone that's confident, and people that are confident in what they're doing are hired much more than people that aren't. So, do you believe in being an attorney? Do you believe in your practice area? Are you excited about it? And so you need to be able to have that. And if you can't do that, again, that's a big problem. Like, if you're not able to like communicate a lot of passion for your accomplishments and what you have to offer, like that's something that you're going to come up against people that are like that. So, if you went to anytime someone has a problem. So when rich people have problems, and I know a lot of rich people have problems. So if rich people have problems in a relationship, they will seek out the best person that may be the most expensive and so forth to help them fix the relationship. Or if they have a medical problem, they do the same thing. If a big company has some sort of problem or thing that they need to be done, they will seek out the people that have the most confidence and believe in what they're doing. They won't hire someone that doesn't have a lot of confidence. I remember one time this is just kind of an interesting aside, but I had a big case that I was fighting in Texas, and I hired this law firm that had these people that had gone to University of Texas a lot, most of them, but they went to other top schools, and they had these incredible like qualifications. They were like, editor in chief of the law review and all these sorts of things. But this firm was, small. It was like 10 attorneys and it wasn't growing, and they had all these problems. This law firm was representing me, and I remember they went to court on a some sort of appellate motion or something. And the attorney like got up there that was representing me, and he just didn't have any confidence. He was nervous and things, and I realized that this person didn't believe in themselves and they couldn't believe in their clients, and was actually a bad hire. And that's why probably that firm, they sat around with all these people with good qualifications, but they didn't have the confidence and they couldn't communicate for that clients. And so the clients, so you need to have a lot of confidence in yourself, and you need to strive to having that sort of confidence and belief in yourself if you're going to do well. And so all this sort of stuff is very, very important. So like I said, this isn't that long of a webinar, but I hope that, so far I've told you about the importance of believing in yourself, the importance of having a goal, the importance of being focused, the importance of your work habits, the importance of impressing people around you, like all these things. Like, even if you just kind of learn 2 of these things and they really click for you today, you're going to have a much better career than the people that don't. And these are the characteristics of the people that succeed. And the people that succeed like what they're doing, they believe in themselves, they get along with others, they impress others, they stay employed in jobs, they don't move around too often, they when they move for good reasons, and they're committed to the profession. And if you're not in that position, you don't think you can get in that position, there's lots of alternative careers and different things you can do. And I highly recommend you do that. So all these things that I'm talking to you about will help you get into better firms. They will help you continually move up. Literally doesn't matter many times where you started. If you become an expert in your practice here and you're enthusiastic about it, then you can do well and overcome all these obstacles. The important thing to also understand is there are a lot of lawyers out there. I mean, there are hundreds. I mean, I think there's 1.5 or 6 million attorneys. I mean, that was when I checked 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm sure there's more. I mean, there's literally, close to a couple million attorneys out there. So that's your competition. So how do you how do you differentiate yourself? How do you look better? Like, how do you be at the top of the profession? And the only way to do that is be taught, doing things that I spoke about today. And, specialization, all these things are gonna, will help you tremendously. All right, so we'll get to questions. One thing I just wanted to say too that, I think is, I would just commend you is I get emails from people, and then people, say things on social media and so forth, but I almost every week from people like yourself that have been on these webinars. And I've been doing these webinars for several years, but I will have people that were just on one webinar and then they, learned something and then they applied it and they just say, this has changed the course of my career. And many people that have been on these webinars, consistently throughout the years, will come to me and just, tell me all these sorts of success stories and things. And so, learning about this stuff is just extremely important, and very few people take the time to really learn how to improve their careers. And I think it's very important that people, that you listen to these and so sorts, because it can really change the direction of kind of what happens and making you successful in a career that you've invested a lot of money and time and development starting. So again, I just say it's very, very smart of you to be on these webinars. It's important to learn from not just myself, but others. Like, so, there may be very successful partners or other people in firms or organizations you want to join that can teach you things. But always trying to learn information and get better and better is just extremely important. So I just, think it's awesome, that you take the time to do this, even during the middle of the day, and very, very smart of you, and something that gives you like a huge advantage, because you can learn things in a webinar that will, that will prevent you from making mistakes in the future or right now, or to fix past mistakes. And that will make you much more effective. There's a story that I heard once, and I really like it, of this person that had this creak in their floor, and they hired all these people to come in, and everyone said, well, the only way to, remove this creak in your wood floor is to replace the whole floor and put it back in again. And then this one person, carpenter, came in, heard the creak in the floor, and he kind of walked around, and then he took a nail and pounded it into one portion of the floor, and the creak stopped. And he gave the person like a bill for $500 or something. And the person that watched this said, this is absolutely insane. Like, you're charging me $500 for this. And he said, no, I'm not charging you $500 for this. I'm charging you $500 because I've been doing this for 30 years. I know exactly where to put the nail. And other people will tell you other things. So, just sometimes you just learn one thing that's important, and it can really kind of change the direction of your career in life. So that's one reason I encourage you to watch these webinars and learn from them, and listen to older ones and so forth. Okay, some law firms are becoming increasingly selective in a tight job market, often prioritizing attorneys with Ivy League backgrounds or big law experience. As someone who went to a regional law school and has worked primarily in mid-sized firms, how can I make myself stand out to employers that seem to prefer more traditional candidates? Okay, so that's a good question. Anytime an employer is looking to hire someone, they're just trying to maximize their self-interest and hire the person that looks best to them. So that looks good to the roster of attorneys they have on their website. Someone, that is currently working at a large law firm, the law firm knows that experience, whatever that experience is going to translate into being able to do the same type of work at the large law firm, working on the same size clients. So anybody that's trying to move from a mid-sized firm, from a regional law school to a larger law firm, is going to be competing against people with bigger backgrounds. So how do you fight that? And how do you be an attorney that looks stronger on paper than someone like that? It's all the things that I spoke to you about today. It's connections, it's looking more motivated, it's specialized, believing in what you do in your practice area, having papers, talks, associations, like all these things communicate higher level of enthusiasm and commitment than someone, from a larger law school. So when people are hiring people, it's very interesting. Like, a lot of times when you get like 5 or 6 years out of law school and your whole goal is to work in one of these law firms for whatever reason, like, you will figure out like how to get it done. Like, you will realize that if you look like just like a better hire to people because you're so excited about this and you love what you're doing and people are saying positive things about you and you're trying to move up, then you become a much better hire than someone that just went to a good law school. So I see this all the time. I mean, if you're an employer and someone just wanted more than anything to work in your law firm, and they developed all the expertise and they'd gotten all this experience and they talked about things with so much enthusiasm, and then they were interviewing you compared to someone from a major law firm in law school that didn't look as excited about what they were doing and so forth, you would hire the person that higher level of enthusiasm, because that person has something to prove and they're going to be more enthusiastic with clients. They're going to be a harder worker. They're going to be more motivated to get along with people. They're going to be less likely to leave. So anytime you develop all the things I've spoken about today, you become a better hire. So just, think about it from a business standpoint. If you're a law firm, you would want to hire someone that looks like they're going to stick around, that they're going to appreciate the job. I mean, law firms, just think about, how you would feel if you hired someone that wanted more than anything to work for you, and that was their dream, and they had done everything they possibly could to do that. You would feel very good about yourself as an employer if you hired them compared to someone that might have better qualifications. So that's just what you need to do. You just need to, really believe in what you're doing, look like it's important to you, and that will come across. And you will also figure out, if you're that enthusiastic, you'll figure out how to make connections, and you'll figure out how to, find people that can help you and all these sorts of things. When I have a older daughter, and she's never had a boyfriend, so she's getting ready to go to college, and she's like, "Oh, I really want to get a boyfriend." And I was like, "Well, the only, the way everybody figures it out. I mean, she's going to figure it out. We'll figure it out. I mean, everyone figures it out." And so it's the same thing, with whatever you're trying to do. You need to figure it out. People that really want something figure it out. And so you need to just, you need to look at what other people are doing. You need to talk to people that have done it. You need to get out there, and if you really want something, you'll get it. You'll figure out how to do it. And I think, you're figuring out today based on the things I said. So hopefully you took notes. Hopefully, when this replay comes up, you listen to it and learn this stuff, and you'll figure it out. I mean, anybody can become a better hire, even if they went to a regional law school, than someone with an Ivy League background. A lot of times too, it's so common. Like, you see people come out of these great law schools and get jobs at great firms. The reason they get jobs at great firms is because if 30,000 people are graduating from law school each year, they have a lot of people that they can choose from, the large firms. And if you were a firm, you would hire people from the best law schools and so forth. And you would also do it early on with candidates that are have just come out of I'm sorry, that are first or second year attorneys, but it's very common for people with these backgrounds to lack the enthusiasm for practicing law, to lack the enthusiasm for working in large law firms, and just to kind of lose that enthusiasm. Very, very common. I would say over 50% of the people that come out with Ivy League backgrounds and so forth lose it. They don't have that enthusiasm, and that comes through, and then people stop hiring them. So just putting yourself in a position where you look like the most enthusiastic hire is always going to work. And employers hire people that aren't from the best law schools and stuff all the time, because that person really wants to work there. Okay, many firms appear to be consolidating practice groups or reducing the number of attorneys in certain practice areas. If my practice is shrinking in demand, would it be smarter to pivot to another specialty, or should I double down and make myself more dispensable in my current field? Yeah, so that's a good question. So some practice areas are always going to be shrinking. Others are going to be growing. Sometimes that growth and shrinking is regional in nature, meaning it could be happening in one area of the country or not another. So what do you do? The way you will typically be able to get the best jobs is to make sure that you're the best person there. So if a practice area is shrinking, if whatever firm you're at, they're going to keep the people that are doing the best work and are the most enthusiastic and getting the most hours compared to others. So that's would be my advice, is if you like what you're doing, to double down on it. The problem with switching practice areas or shifting specialties is that when you do that, it's not showing like a continuity of on your resume. So, if you're 3 years out and thinking about switching practice areas, then, you're almost walking into something as a first year, and then you're going to look uncommitted. So my advice is always to be the best possible person you can in whatever you're doing, because law firms will always keep around people that are doing the best work. Now, some law firms, like large law firms, may be getting rid of their and they may not want to do employment work anymore and getting rid of that, or they may be getting rid of patent prosecution and things. So sometimes law firms will actually remove practice areas, and if that's happening, then you just need to find a firm that's more more doing more of your practice area. And a lot of times, one of the solutions to that is also to go to boutique and smaller firms, because the boutique and smaller firms will often be specialists in that practice area, and so they will be committed to it, whereas a large law firm, for whatever reasons, may not. Okay, next question. How much does it help to have a legal recruiter vouch for you versus applying directly? And how do I know if my recruiter is actually helping me or just sending out my resume indiscriminately? So a lot of people have questions like, why should I use a legal recruiter? Does a legal recruiter help me, or is a legal recruiter not helping me? Like, is it smart for me to use a recruiter? Do law firms care about recruiter fees? I guess that's one. Fees, connections. What is your other question? Or applying directly? Applying directly. Okay, so it's a good question. There are different types of legal recruiters. There's some that are very good at it. There's others that aren't. So if you're at a big firm and you get a phone call from someone, that person probably isn't very busy, and all they're trying to do, I mean, they don't have a lot of their own candidates, and so all they're trying to do is they get a listing from some firm that has a job and they will call you, or they may have actually a connection at a firm and be calling you about that. And once they find you, they will talk to the firm about you and it would be very helpful. But so, it depends on the recruiter you're working for. When I work with people, yeah, I would say applying directly, and then sending resume out indiscriminately. Okay, so this is a good question. So people will always have questions about using a recruiter. So one of the reasons is like, why would an employer pay fees for a recruiter? Okay, so here's the first thing to understand about recruiter fees. So if you're billing out at $500 an hour and working 2,000 hours a year, whatever that is, 2,000 hours a year, just that's a lot, but let's just say hypothetically, you're generating $1 million a year for a lot, and $1 million a year, of fees you're generating. So, and then if the law firm doesn't have someone doing your work, the law firm's losing $20,000 a week without someone there. So that's one of the things without someone there. So if a recruiter steps in, the recruiter might charge, I don't know, 1 to 2 weeks of whatever, 1 to 2 weeks of your income, so they'll typically charge a fee, and it will typically be based on your income. They'll charge 1 to 2 weeks of your income, and then is it worth hiring a recruiter in that situation? Yes, because any firm will use a recruiter, because if the firm has an opening or has work to do, why wouldn't they spend like 1 to 2 weeks of your income to get someone in there so they're not losing money? And why wouldn't they spend like 1 to 2 weeks of your income to hire you if they don't have for the best applicant? So every firm uses recruiters. It's ridiculous to think that they wouldn't if they're losing money when they don't hire you. So I place people with solo practitioners, all sorts of things all the time. And law firms really, and the big scheme of things, don't care about using a recruiter, for the best person. So that's the first thing. Recruiter fees really have nothing to do with anything. They're not really a big calculation. Now, the next one is like connection. So you're right, certain recruiters will have very good connections with people. Like the law firm will give the recruiter a job and say, we really need help filling this. And then the recruiter will go out and they'll find people that are perfectly positioned to do that. They may cold call you, they may do all sorts of things. When the recruiter's involved, typically the largest law firms will just kind of mass market their jobs to recruiters. Will just send every recruiter that they like and can find the job, and then lots of recruiters will send stuff. So if a recruiter's working with like a smaller mid-sized firm directly that's asking them to go find people, those are actually probably very good jobs to use a recruiter for, especially because you're much more likely to get that job if you if you use the recruiter, because the recruiter's been, it could be something really interesting, like, I mean, just kind of ridiculous, like an attorney to, I don't know, work with a certain type of family law client, like, I don't know, like a whatever, but the recruiters, if the recruiter has connections and is reaching out to you, then you'll often have a very good chance of getting that job. And the recruiter may actually have what's called an exclusive job. When you apply directly to firms, that's a decent way to do things too. But it's also sometimes much more difficult to get the employer's attention. So when a recruiter is working for you, the recruiter will be, you know, getting your resume, and a good recruiter will be not only submitting your resume, but will be doing, like, they will interview you in great detail. They will prepare letters that are highlighting your strengths. They will and they'll send that to the firm, and they will say things about you that are very positive, that if you said them on your own, wouldn't get the attention of the hiring people. Like some of the things that I've talked to you about today, like making sure your resume is focused on one practice area, fixing that. Also making sure you have transaction sheets and all these things. Like, these are things you probably wouldn't do on your own. And then when you apply directly, you often, if the recruiter gets interviews for you, if it's a good recruiter, the recruiter will prepare you and make sure that you're doing things in your interviews and so forth that will get you the job versus not getting the job. So that's how a good recruiter can help. But all of these things, fees aren't a big issue, but the connections, if the recruiter has connections, can be a big deal. And then if you're applying directly, you're not going to be able to say positive things about yourself that a good recruiter would do, and you're not going to be prepared for interviews. You're not going to have someone helping you negotiate offers. You're not going to make mistakes. So when I work with candidates, I will make sure that their resume is fixed properly. I will interview them in great detail to answer all sorts of questions, like, why are you looking for a job, why the person is looking for a job, and all these sorts of things you couldn't necessarily do on your own. The firm calls a recruiter and will ask some questions. And then the recruiter will pester, a good recruiter will pester the law firm to hire you, to look at you. They will do all sorts of things to get the employer interested in you and not miss your resume, like might happen if you apply on your own. For large law firms in major cities, very few people are applying directly. Most of them are using a recruiter. It's almost an expectation. The law firms expect you to go through a recruiter. Because the recruiter is helping, just people, that's what happens in like New York and stuff. Almost everybody uses a recruiter. So, and it's almost like an expectation, but yeah, so you can always apply directly to firms, but your chances of getting an interview, the follow up, and then doing, performing well in your interviews and so forth, depending on the quality of the recruiter, is going to make a big difference. So you can certainly apply directly, but you're often less likely to do well in your interviews, and also to get the interview many times, because the recruiter is following up and calling and doing all these things to try to get you in there. That's what a recruiter does. And then, there's so many things that go wrong in the process. So people will apply with a wrong resume, or they will make mistakes in interviews, and then even when offers come in. So if a firm makes one of my candidates an offer, like, I want that offer to go through me, because sometimes I'll call the candidate, and the candidate will be like, oh, this offer's a bummer. Like, I don't like it, like they're on, and so, and the firm calls them with that offer, they're going to behave the same way, and the firm's not going to, there's all sorts of things that happen. And then a good recruiter will have a sense of, should the person accept the offer, right? Is a person going to accept this offer? All these different sorts of things that a recruiter will get things done that don't happen when someone's applying directly. So, most people, like when they're selling a house, will use a real estate agent, because a real estate agent can do things a little bit differently. Now, does a recruiter send out a resume indiscriminately? So a good recruiter will have openings, but then a good recruiter will often, which I do, will try to get people interested in firms that don't have openings, and will send the resume out to firms that may not have openings. And what is the recruiter doing? The recruiter is trying to find a place that has a business need for you, and they're applying to places for you that you wouldn't do on your own, which can help you get a job. And more than 50% of the jobs that I get for candidates are with firms that don't have openings. So that's some information about a recruiter. It depends a lot of cases, on the recruiter you're using, I guess. But the cost benefit analysis is generally going to be that you're going to be better off using a recruiter than not. That's, my opinion. When I was younger, like I was like, oh, if a firm has to pay a fee, they're not going to hire me. This recruiter's, might hurt me as opposed to help me. But, as I got more deeply in this profession after several months of doing it, I realized that, recruiters, a good recruiter will give people far more jobs than someone that's not using a recruiter. But it really depends on the quality of recruiter. And you have to be careful in this profession too, because you don't know like how good they are. You don't know how good the recruiter is that you're working with. You don't know like how effective they're going to be. So you don't know the answer to all these questions. And so it can be hard hiring a recruiter. It'd be hard hiring anybody. Like you don't know how good a psychologist is. You don't know, anytime you're hiring someone that's providing a service as opposed to a product, it's difficult. So, this is how people hire attorneys too. So if you go and buy a Mercedes, like you're going to know, is that Mercedes a really good car? You'll know about it just because of the product's what it is. But with the service, it's very difficult. So same thing with recruiters. Okay, if I've been applying to law firms for months without much success, despite having solid credentials and experience, could it be that my resume or cover letter is not as effective as I think? What are some common mistakes that attorneys make on their job application materials that may unknowingly get them screened out in a competitive market? Okay, well, the first thing is like when law firms are looking at your resume, all they're doing is making business decisions. And the business decision is this the best applicant for the job? So if you're not getting interviews and jobs, you're probably just not like the best applicant. And it's nothing to feel badly by yourself. I mean, if the law firm has 50 resumes for a job, excuse me, and you don't look like the best applicant, then there's nothing that you've done wrong. It's just that you don't look like the best applicant compared to other people that are applying for the job. So the only way to make your resume better is to make yourself look more specialized and better in your practice area. So, more fit for the job you're applying to. So, so what does that mean? That just means that, your resume needs to speak specifically to your practice area and the, practice area and the job you're applying for. And that's the biggest mistake that people make when they're sending out resumes, is their resume doesn't look specialized enough in their practice area. So if a firm has an opening for someone to do like this example, I'm trying to give you an example of I don't know, commercial litigation. So what one resume may talk about how the person did some intellectual property work. They're proud that they did a couple of trademarks. Then we'll talk about that they've done a couple of real estate transactions. They might talk about I don't know, just some stuff that has nothing to do with commercial litigation. And then they get another resume and it's all about commercial litigation. It's got an extra sheet at the end that talks about commercial litigation. The person looks like all their summer jobs and things were related to commercial litigation. Like everything looks like commercial litigation compared to another resume that doesn't have that focus. So looking focused on your practice here is really the best thing you can do. And then many times you may be applying to firms where your credentials and experience aren't yet enough for that firm. So it's not your fault, but the best thing you can do is look very specialized in your practice area and make sure your resume, like there's something I call like the scent of the resume. So the scent of the resume basically needs to be, all about that practice area. So all about the practice area. So, people will have all these other things like jobs that they have before law school, like jobs they had during law school, like associations are part of, like different practice areas they worked at different firms. And your resume anytime someone reads it, they just need to think your practice area. So even clubs you're in, like, people might say, oh, I was in an entertainment law club in law school, but yet you're a corporate transactional attorney. Like you should make your resume just talk only about your practice area, because that's what people want to see. And that's the resumes will do the best. Most of the time your cover letter is people aren't going to really read your cover letter. They're just going to look at your resume. So the people that are focused for each job are the ones that are most likely to get in. So that's really the only thing that you can do. Many times, you may be applying for firms in large markets, like where there's a lot of competition. So, the only way around that is to try to apply to maybe smaller firms in a large market, or to apply to firms in smaller markets where you'll be much better received than, if you're competing. So it's just, business decision is, are you the best applicant? Are you the best applicant? That's it. So that's all they care about. So, the only way around that is looking focused, more focused, and committed to your practice area, or to apply to firms, firms with less competition, or firms in smaller markets. That's it. So, that's how you get around it. But there's nothing to feel badly about if you're not getting interviews. The only way to fix that is to fix your resume, make it look focused, and then decide, where am I most likely to get a job? And that's really it. All the stuff I talked about today with commitment, liking it, building up a lot of experience, and looking good on your resume is all going to help you quite a bit. Okay, and thanks for all these questions. These are awesome questions. So lateral hiring seems to be much more difficult right now, with firms being hesitant to take on attorneys unless they have a portable book of business. If I don't currently have a strong client base, what are the realistic options for lateral movement? Should I focus on growing a book of business before making a move? Are other firms still willing to hire laterals primarily based on experience and potential? Yes, of course. So, yes. So, all you have to do is you have to find a firm, with more work than they can handle, in your practice area. That's it. So you just need to find a firm that has, enough work. And that's something that I actually specialize in. I mean, I've been doing it my whole career, but you just need to be able to find a firm with more work they can handle in your practice area. It's not easy to find those firms. Typically you'll need to, there's no way of knowing that, but typically you'll need to, hold on one second. Typically you'll need to find, you'll basically need to apply to a lot of places, and a lot of places, without even having openings, to find those sorts of firms. So you need to find firms like that. But the reason, I'll just I'll map this out for everyone. Like, why does it get harder to get a job when you're more senior? Well, what happens is partners, with work, typically make more money when they do their own work, so they do own work, as opposed to giving it to others. So what does that mean? So it means that, and this is kind of why it's harder for more senior attorneys to get business, giving it to others. So attorney might make 50% of the work they do, 50% of the work they bill, they keep, and then they might get 20%, or even 15, or let's just say 20% of the work they do others, the work they give others. So imagine a partner might be billing out at, this is just an example, 14. Let's just take not a huge firm, $1,000 an hour. So, the client is going to prefer that for, work done. And part might have been senior associate, so whatever. So counsel, non-equity partner, say income partner. This is just might bill out at $800 now. So, the client is going to prefer that the work at a high hourly rate done by the partner. Partner is going to prefer doing its own work, because they make more money doing its own work than giving it to others. So that's kind of the basics of how that works. So because the partner is going to make more money. So the reason mid-levels and stuff are good, mid-levels, juniors and stuff, is because their billing rate might be from 300 to 600, 300, 600. So it looks good for the partner to give mid-levels and juniors work, because they're saving money. But when high value work comes in, where the law firm's going to prefer, or the partner's going to prefer to do their own work. But sometimes partners will have huge books of business, and when they can't possibly do high value work, high billable hour work on their own, and so then they give it to others. So that's kind of how that works. So you need to find firms where there's partners that have more high hourly value work than they can do, and so they don't care about only getting 20% because they just don't even have anywhere near the bandwidth. And that means you need to find a firm with a partner, with a huge book of business, or partners with a huge book of business that they can't do on their own. And then you can get hired even if you don't have business. And there are, in most large law firms, there are an incredible number of partners that have, not an incredible number, but a large number of partners that may have more work than they can handle on their own. And therefore they will hire people that are senior without business. But you're always better off having business, because if you have business, then the way to think about having business is law firms, law firms basically work for you by providing associates and office space and secretaries and things and payroll, as opposed to you working for the law firm. So your goal is always to get business. But if you can't get business for whatever reason, that's not your thing, then you just need to find a firm with a lot of work. And sorry for the long explanation. It's just a very good question. I wanted everyone to understand that from kind of a career standpoint. And the way to find these firms is just to apply to a ton of places, even without opening your mind. Okay, some of my colleagues have taken contract or temporary positions to stay employed during the slowdown, but I'm concerned about how that might affect my long-term prospects. Is it, if I take a temporary role, will it make it harder for me to go law firm position later on? Yes. So no attorney, regardless of where you went to law school, regardless of your grades, regardless of the market, should ever take a temporary role. That is just not something you should do. You should go to a smaller firm or a smaller market instead of taking a temporary role. You will be less employable taking a temporary role than someone that you're competing with that's working in a full-time role. So that's just how it works. You can't reasonably expect a law firm to think you're the best applicant if you're taking some temporary contract type role or document review job, and you do not need to do it. So that's the easy way out. You need to find a permanent law firm position now. You need to apply to every possible firm that you can apply to on your own if you're not working with a recruiter, but you need to find a permanent role, and you need to do it in your practice area, and you need to make sure you do it, and you need to make sure that you're just applying every possible place you can, because you do not want a temporary role. There's no reason that anybody that goes to law school and passes the bar should be doing a temporary role. And I'm not trying to be harsh on you, because a lot of people do this, but it just doesn't make any sense. There's always someone that will hire you for a permanent role. You just need to apply to a lot of places. And so my advice to you is to never do that, and to do everything you can to find a permanent position. If you feel like you're going to lose your job or something because of whatever's going on in your firm and the market's bad, you need to find a place that will hire you. This is what the best attorneys do. The best attorneys will always seek out something that's permanent, because you're basically your own advocate, like you're being your own attorney trying to save your career. Do not take a temporary role. It will make it much more difficult for you to get into a firm later on. So, just look at it from a business point. If you're a law firm, who would you hire? Someone in a permanent position that stayed employed in a law firm, or someone that's coasting in a temporary position. I mean, just think about it from the standpoint of a law firm. Who would you hire? You would hire the person that's currently in a law firm. So, what do? You apply every possible place you can find, everywhere you can possibly find. That's it. You just every single place that you can find to apply to. So how do you do that? I will open my screen real quickly. Google, how do you find these firms? And this is just an extremely important piece of advice. So, and I hope I'm glad everyone's on this listening, because people will go through periods of their career where they find where they're in trouble. So, small boutiques that do corporate law in New York City. I'm just giving you an example. Like someone may be losing their job in New York City. So corporate law. So small law firm boutiques that do this type of law in New York City. So you just go through all of this information. You go through all these pages of things. You apply to every possible firm you can. That's a boutique in New York City that does it. Then you would do, you could even do law firms that do corporate law in New York City. In New York City, you're going to get these huge lists of places you can apply to. Look at that. There's rankings from BCG, which is really nice. It comes up first. Wow. So you just, this shows you we're kind of an expert in that, but you apply to every possible law firm that you can find that does the work, and you just don't give up. You pages and pages of these law firms. We're on page 6. We're still finding places. Excuse me. And so accident law is obviously not them, but then, but you just keep applying to as many places as you possibly can find. If you're not getting a job in New York City doing corporate law, then you apply to firms in Rochester, New York, or wherever, or you just keep finding and applying to places. You don't you don't give up. You can do it, in Rochester. You can also find, if you go to Indeed or LinkedIn, Law Crossing is very good. That's a site that I own. The only reason I recommend it, and I started it, is because all these law firms have career sites, and the only jobs that are going to be on Indeed and LinkedIn are going to be jobs that those law firms advertise. So, most law firms are not advertising their jobs. So all Law Crossing does is it goes to their websites and it finds jobs, and it does that with, tens of thousands of law firms across the country. So it's a good resource, $25 a month. I recommend everyone sign up for it, just because knowing what's out on the market, but you need to apply to every possible place you can. No one should ever have to take a contract job. It doesn't make any sense. You apply to smaller markets, or you apply to every possible place you can find in a market. In almost every case, there's going to be plenty of firms in whatever market you're in that do the work you're doing that people aren't applying to. So just highly recommend not ever doing contract work. Okay, are there particular legal fields you foresee having more job stability and growth than despite the downturn in hiring? Sure. I mean, there are tons of things. Let me just show you here some different practice areas where there's a lot of stability. Let's go here. Okay, so I'm just pulling this up. I didn't want to share the species database. We're just going to show you candidates. Okay, so you have all of these different practice areas that attorneys can do. So you have things like antitrust or bankruptcy or construction. So there are a lot of legal fields where there's not enough people doing the work, where there's more stability than others. So one of them would be like construction law, like that's a very good niche. Data privacy is not a good niche because too many people are trying to do it. There's always going to be plenty of people that are needed to do criminal law. Different types of corporate law are very dependent on the legal market and how well it's doing and how many corporate transactions and stuff are going on. So those jobs can have a major turn down at large firms. Like something like, securities is often dependent on, people doing IPOs and things, and those can slow down. Then you have, what else? Things like a risk are good because it's a very good specialty. Different types of environmental can be okay, like land use, because people, there's always land use issues coming out where people are trying to do things, to get different permits and things in different cities. That's a good one. Entertainment is not necessarily a very good one because those jobs are very, very competitive. But, if you become an expert in it, those can be okay. Education is always a good practice area because there's not enough people doing it. So that's a good one to be in. And there's always going to be work with school district boards and teachers and things in education law. Family law is a great one. There's always family law work. So people are always going to be getting divorced. So if you do that, you're going to have a lot of employment stability, an exceptional practice area. Food and drug law is difficult because there's not a lot of people doing it. Franchise law, same thing. General practice is very good, transaction litigation and that sort of thing in smaller markets. So there's always a demand for that in smaller markets. Government is very difficult in a lot of cases, like government contracts, there's just not enough jobs. But international trade, same thing. But Social Security law is a good one. There's plenty of jobs doing that. Healthcare is a great one, especially compliance, because you imagine, the healthcare industry is massive. And so there's always going to be work doing that. Immigration law is always very good. There's plenty of people needed for that. Insurance, doing insurance coverage is always good because there's always disputes related to that. Insurance defense is always very good. There's always going to be people suing for auto accidents and things, and insurance companies need to defend against that. And the same thing with plaintiffs work in insurance. There's always going to be people suing over that. Intellectual property is difficult because that, that has been kind of the work has been going down for a long time. Trademark and copyright's very risky because there's not enough jobs doing it. So that can be difficult and it's not that difficult to learn. Patent work is also good to be in, but it's also very difficult because there's a lot more competition. There used to be labor and employment is a good practice area. There's always going to be people suing employers. There's always going to be people needed to do that type of work. So and defending against employers and asking for advice, litigation, there's all different types of litigation. I'm not going to talk about this because I don't want to waste too much time, but there's, always going to be different types of litigation done, like professional liability, for example. There's always going to be people suing doctors and lawyers and things, and then people defending against it. So, all types of litigation, municipal law, same thing. There's always been people doing that related to cities because there's cities all over the country. Native American law, I'm not going to talk, not a lot doing that. Nonprofit, it's okay. Real estate is somewhat dependent on the economy, but there's always going to be residential transactions. People are always going to be purchasing and selling things, so that's good. Tax is difficult because there's not a lot of jobs doing that. That can be a very difficult practice area to be in. You can always get a job in an accounting firm, but in terms of law firms, there's not always a lot of work. Telecom, not a lot of work. Trust in estates is an incredible practice area. If you want to choose a practice area where you can develop a book of business and where there's a lot of work, almost every trust and estates attorney that I work with gets interviews, and then workers' compensation always going on. So those are some of the practice areas. I'm sorry for spending so much time in them. I wasn't trying to kind of go into too much detail, but if you're choosing a practice area, generally, most practice areas where you're representing consumers, meaning people that are injured, we use personal injury law, defending against people that are injured for insurance, immigration, trust in the states, like all that sort of stuff, and any form of litigation because people are always suing and need people to defend them, and litigation is always going on. So only practice area that I mentioned that's a little bit difficult is corporate, but corporate's interesting because you can always go in-house and things with that. So that's, good practice area too. Okay. As a recent graduate looking to relocate based on where I have some close friends located and where opportunities in my field are, what do you think is the best approach to show interest as the area? So yeah, so just saying you have some connections there is great. You have friends and things and you want to settle there, that's usually enough. But law firms, when they're hiring people from out of town, they typically want to think that the person's going to come there and stay. So that the risk is that someone will come to an area and then leave because they don't have enough connections or something and then go home to be in their family. One thing that's interesting is a lot of times it's very difficult for like international people that get LLMs and things to get jobs in the US because there's the idea that they might not stay there, they want to go home. If you have strong ties to an area where your family and stuff is, those are actually very good types of moves to make because if you're moving someplace like where you're from or your family's from, law firms assume that you're moving there for family reasons and not performance reasons, and that if you do move there, you're likely to stay. So people love hiring people that are where they're from. And as a matter of fact, like say you're from Cleveland, if you're in Cleveland applying for jobs, it's going to be much harder if you're actually from there and living there than if you're someone that's like in New York City and relocating to Cleveland because your family's there. Because when you relocate, there's no questions about your performance. The firms are like, okay, we only get one chance to hire this person, so you can apply to a lot of places, even without openings. And then firms are likely to interview you because they know that you'll stay and you're not leaving because there's some sort of performance concerns of your existing firm. So relocating can be a very smart thing. Anytime an attorney is having like issues in their market, like the market might be too slow, or there's not enough people, just any issues that you're having or problems, it's always really smart to just blast out some applications to the firms in the market you're from, because it can often be much easier to get jobs there. Okay. Hey, Harrison, I know you often advise attorneys to cold apply to firms that don't have posted job openings. How long should I wait after cold applying to a firm before trying again? You can apply to them often, like every 6 months. I mean, if a firm sees your resume, and then they don't have an opening, and then you apply 6 months later, it can be helpful. So the way to think about things is what's called the moving parade. So the moving parade says that, just as an example. So the moving parade means like these are the times when the firm may have work. So they may have work and be interested in hiring someone. So if you apply here, it's going to be success. But, if you apply here, when the firm's like right here with its work, no success. So you can't ever, you just never know when the law firm's going to have an opening. So it is smart to always apply to firms many times, even if they don't have openings. So I'll just show you kind of an example. Let me just do one thing. Database, there's some. So just to give you an example of like how many places there are to potentially apply. This is just a sample resume right here, BCG. So this person, let's just say it says they do securities litigation. Let's just well, their setup is insurance defense as an example. So like, there's so many places that someone can apply to. It's just crazy. So, here, like this is just an example right now of openings on BCG, and I just want to show you like how many. These are just openings that we have for someone right now doing insurance defense in New York, which is just crazy. I mean, look at all these firms, New York, New Jersey, and then not only that, but then you're going to have. Let me just show you here. In addition to those openings, there's firms, that have had openings in the past that we could look at, which would show you that maybe those firms will have openings in the future. So you have all these firms. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, look at how many places there are to be like strong in the practice here. So we will like recommend them. There's another 80 firms. So, so far we've looked at probably 250 or 300 firms in these areas, this area of the country that does this work. Then you can look at law crossing jobs, which are jobs that, for example, the law crossing found that BCG doesn't have, which should show you that there's always going to be like an incredible. These are all jobs that law crossing found that BCG doesn't have in the same practice area. Then you can look at, so far we've just found like over 300 places, and you wonder why do I recommend this? I recommend this because these are just active jobs, and then firms that have had jobs in the past. And if a firm's had a job in the past, then there's a good chance that they may have something in the future. So then these are firms that have had jobs in this practice area, I guess it looks like possibly in the past. And then not only that, but then you can look at firms that we search in different database. So we can, these are firms just in this area of New Jersey that does that haven't been recommended. And then if you were to look at, let's just see here, firms do insurance defense general, regions of interest, then you're going to see another 60. So there are literally, if you were like someone looking for a job, I just found over 500 places that this person could apply to. So you should never worry about finding a job. You should just need to be able to track down the places that do potentially have jobs. Let me see, I might have lost something here. Give me 1 second. Sharing a screen, just give me 1 second. Or documents. Documents, give me 1 second. What happened here? Give me 1 second. It looks like my I lost my document. But my point, I guess my point to everyone is that there's always going to be like an incredible number of places that anyone can apply to. And you don't really need to worry. I don't know why I have any problem finding my Word documents. All right, this computer is just crashing. So, and for whatever reason, I'm unable to open a Word document. Okay, so the next question is, thank you very much for these webinars. I've been watching them for 2 years. My life has completely changed. I'm so excited and grateful for my current position. If I ever need another position, I will definitely reach out to your company. Thank you. Okay, you're welcome. And I'm glad to see that your life and career can change if you get educational information. So, I would suggest anybody just read my articles and things, because they can and watch these webinars. They can help you. Most subscriptions require candidates to have a JD from an accredited ABA law school. How can I make myself stand out as a candidate to pass the bar without a US JD? So it's very difficult if you're a foreign attorney to be able to get a job in the US without a JD. When people get JDs, here keeps freezing. When people get a JD from a US law school, shows that you got into a certain quality of law school, and then in addition to having got into that law school, you were able to compete at a certain level, get certain grades, and so forth. Whereas if you just go to an LLM program, that there's not the same rigor, you're not ranked, and so forth in your class. So I, typically, like if you don't have a USJD, it's going to be much more difficult. I recommend anybody that's looking for a position, do whatever you can, if you're coming from a foreign country, to get a JD from a US law school, because that's going to make you much more employable. What do you do if you don't have a JD and try to find jobs? Well, your best bet is not going to be try to get jobs in major cities where there's a lot of people. Your best bet is to try to get jobs in smaller markets where there's not as many people. So a lot of people, for example, come over to the US and they look for jobs. They make one past the New York bar and they will try to get a job in New York City, which is crazy because there's so many people there competing for jobs. There's far more attorneys in New York City than there are jobs. So how do you get a job? So list of cities and municipalities in New York State. New York State. So I'm just showing you real briefly, like kind of how that would work. So you have all of these different places that, cities and things that you could apply to jobs in and search for jobs. And so, you look at the population, you sort of by population, and you have like Spring Valley that has 33,000 attorneys in it. So then you could go, let's see, firms that do commercial litigation. Say you want to be a litigator in what was the name of this municipality? Spring Valley, New York. In Spring Valley. So you're going to get all of these different firms in Spring Valley that do this sort of work, and then you would just basically go and apply to all of them if you could. Why do I recommend that? Because look at all these places, because no one else is doing that. So imagine if you did that with all the places in New York State that had more than 25,000 people in them. You would have hundreds, if not thousands, of places to apply to, and people aren't, applying to work in Schenectady, New York, or Troy, New York, and so there's going to be fewer attorneys there. So why wouldn't you try to apply to places that aren't getting a lot of applicants? So that's how you get a job. Did I miss anything? Okay, I am currently employed, but worried, concerned about job security. At my firm has been quietly laying off associates. Would you advise proactively searching for a new position now, even if I haven't been let go yet? Yes. So every attorney in the legal market should always be searching for new positions. I don't care who you are or where you're at. You should always be aware of what the positions are out there. So I recommend always watching jobs and Indeed and LinkedIn, and especially Law Crossing, and seeing what's out there. And if things look slow at your firm and they're laying people off, I would apply to every possible place I could. You would be stupid not to, and you may be very loyal to your employer, but that does not make any sense to not be applying everywhere you possibly could, because if we're letting people go, that means that the firm doesn't have enough work. If the firm doesn't have enough work, it means you're not doing well. If the firm's not doing well, you need to find some place that has work. So my advice is for every single person in the legal market, if you are a practicing attorney and you're dependent on other people to give you work, you should always be aware of what's in the market. I would recommend signing up for Law Crossing and getting job alerts in your practice area, and look at Law Crossing every day, and doing the same thing with Indeed and seeing what's out there. If things are slow at your firm, you need to be proactive and go get a job. You would have to be absolutely crazy not to. So every single attorney, my advice is to always be looking for a job, always be aware of what's in the market. If I call up a partner in a law firm that's got a large book of business, they will almost always talk to me. Not because they're looking for a job, maybe, but because they always want to be aware of what other opportunities are out there. You should always be watching the market. You should be watching whatever market you'd be interested in working at. You should watch for jobs and see what's there. And you would be absolutely insane not to. And you need to apply to places if your firm is laying people off. You need to talk to recruiters. You need to do whatever you can to protect yourself. Everybody should be looking for a job or aware of what's in the market at all times. You have to. I mean, it's the only way to protect your career. And you don't want to get laid off and not have a job and be unemployed. Why would you even take that risk? Okay, I've noticed that many job openings for attorneys in my practice here have disappeared over the last few months. Given the current tight legal market, what specific strategies can I use to uncover hidden opportunities that may not be publicly advertised? So, hidden job opportunities that aren't publicly advertised are places that are doing your work in your practice area that may not be advertised. So, so you should be watching, reading legal newspapers and seeing who may be busy in your practice area. You can proactively apply to firms that don't have openings. I mean, there's nothing wrong with throwing your resume to a firm that they don't have any openings because they may have the work. So you always need to be, if you see law firms that are hiring a lot of people in a practice area, you read about it. It's smart to apply there. You can always, if there's no work in your practice area, you can be looking for work. So let's talk about this. So now we're back, here we are, let's say New York's, let me share my screen. So we're in New York City, but maybe this person is interested in working in Yonkers, White Plains, New York. So say you're a trademark attorney, right? And you're from White Plains, New York. You could go and you could, say, trademark attorneys. And this is a very difficult practice area, Plains, New York. So, can you find trademark attorneys in White Plains, New York? So let me see what I'm doing on here. Sorry. I'm having a real problem with my computer. It's not working out for me. But the idea would be, if you were interested in, a trademark attorney, there's not enough work, then, then you can basically go and, search for places that may do the kind of work you do and apply to attorneys and network with them and send them your resume and say, hey, I'm in this practice area like you are. I would be interested in potentially working for you. So as a recent graduate looking to relocate based on where I have some friends. Oh, I already answered that. Okay. How do you go about business development as a solo attorney? I mean, that's a kind of a loaded question, but the way to go about business development as a solo attorney is typically to, have a specialty, make sure you have a lot of material in your website about your specialty, and then you can advertise your specialty, or you can go out and look for that type of work. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I could say about that question. Let me see if there's something here, how to develop business as an attorney. So if you do this search, the internet, you'll find, all sorts of articles and things that I've written that can help you. There's, if you literally, and you can see top 9 ways, 30 ways to generate business, crafting business plans, effective business plans, all these different things that I've written. So, and a lot of these articles are, I think pretty good. So like this is kind of a short article right here that probably needs to be expanded. But there's a lot of a lot of things that I've written that can help you with that. This is actually, it looks like a webinar. So I would, I have a lot of advice and things that are, that I've written and so forth. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being on the webinar. I think this is a very good topic. And again, I commend everyone for spending time watching this, because it can really make a huge difference in your career. I mean, spending a couple hours watching this and educating yourself can prevent you from making a lot of mistakes, and then can also, help you tremendously in your future and everything that you're trying to do. So, again, nice work, and I will be back next week, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your day. Thank you.